On Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard my wife making love to my brother through the bedroom wall. Fukel not suspected, not wondered about, heard it. Her voice doing things I hadn't heard in 2 years. His laugh that I'd known since we were kids in our grandmother's backyard. Both of them in the mansion she'd inherited 6 months ago. The mansion I wasn't allowed to sleep in anymore. I was standing in what used to be the gardener's cottage, holding a glass of water, wearing boxer shorts and an old Metallica shirt with holes in it. The main house was 50 yards away across the manicured lawn, but sound travels at night when you're not supposed to hear it. When you're supposed to be sleeping in your little exile cottage, like a good boy who couldn't keep his construction business afloat. My name is Danny Garrett, 45 years old, 20 years married to Anna Garrett, successful attorney, daughter of the late Harold Westbrook, who'd left her everything. We had a daughter, Leah, 19 and away at college. I'd spent the last 3 years playing house husband after my contracting company went under, and I'd spent the last 6 months watching my wife turn into someone I didn't recognize. The inheritance changed her, or maybe it just revealed who she'd always been. I set the water glass down on the cottage's cheap kitchenette counter and walked outside in my bare feet. The grass was wet with dew. The main house glowed with warm light from the master bedroom, our bedroom, except it wasn't ours anymore. She'd moved me out here temporarily while she organized the estate. That was in March. It was now September. I stood there in the dark yard like an idiot, listening to my life end. Greg's truck was parked in the circular driveway. A Ford F-250, black, immaculate. He'd driven over from the city to help Anna with some legal paperwork. That's what she'd told me at dinner, which we'd shared in painful silence at the cottage because she didn't want me eating in the big house anymore. Said it made her feel crowded. The sounds stopped. I heard laughter. Then, silence. I walked back to the cottage, pulled on jeans and boots, grabbed my keys, and drove into town. It was a Tuesday night in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, population 8,000, the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. I drove past the closed diner, the dark storefronts, the Methodist church where we'd gotten married in 2005 when we were young and stupid and thought love meant something. I ended up at Frank's Gym, the 24-hour place where I'd been working part-time as a night janitor since July. Frank had given me the job out of pity after word got around that Danny Garrett was broke and living in a shed behind his rich wife's house. I had a key. I let myself in. The gym was empty at 3:30 in the morning. I turned on half the lights and sat on a bench press bench, staring at nothing. My brother Greg, 38 years old, personal, trainer, divorced twice. The kind of guy who wore expensive cologne and tight shirts and talked about his gains like they were stock portfolios. Our mother had died when we were teenagers. Our father had checked out emotionally long before that. Greg and I had been close once, back when close meant playing basketball in driveways and stealing beers from garage refrigerators. We weren't close anymore, hadn't been for years. But I'd never thought he'd do this. I'd never thought Anna would do this. The funny thing about betrayal is how stupid it makes you feel. Not angry at first, stupid, like you'd been walking around with a sign on your back that said, "Kick me," and everyone could see it except you. I sat there until 5 in the morning, watching the sun come up through the gym's high windows. Then I went back to the cottage, showered, and made coffee. Anna appeared at 7, perfectly dressed in a charcoal suit, carrying her briefcase. Hair pulled back in that severe way that made her look 10 years older and 1,000 times meaner than the girl I'd married. "You're up early," she said, not looking at me. "Couldn't sleep." Greg left already. We got through most of the estate documents. There's still some trust fund paperwork that needs attention. She poured herself coffee from my pot, doctored it with cream from my refrigerator, checked her phone with the casual authority of someone who owned everything, including the air I breathed. "How long has it been going on?" I asked. She looked up. Her face didn't change. "How long has what been going on?" "You and Greg." The silence lasted about 3 seconds. Then she smiled. Not a nice smile, not an embarrassed smile, but something cold and evaluating, like she was calculating how much this conversation was going to cost her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I heard you last night." "You heard what?" "Both of you, in the bedroom." She took a sip of coffee. "The bedroom is 100 yards away from here, Danny. You couldn't have heard anything. Sound travels. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Yes." She set the mug down. "And I think it's time we talked about your mental state. Frank called me yesterday. He's concerned about your performance at the gym, said you've been distracted, hostile with members." My stomach dropped. "Frank said that?" "He's worried about you." "I'm worried about you. I think you need to see someone, a therapist, maybe a psychiatrist. This whole situation with the business failing, the money troubles, living out here, it's clearly affecting you." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Gaslight me. I heard what I heard." She picked up her briefcase. "I have court at 9. We'll talk about this later. And Danny, I think you should take some time off from the gym. Get yourself together. Maybe go stay with a friend for a while." "This is my home." "No," she said, and her voice was ice. "This is my home. You're a guest here, and guests who make wild accusations about their hosts don't get to stay very long." She left. I stood there holding my coffee mug, shaking. Frank fired me on Thursday. He did it with the kind of awkward sympathy that made it worse, sitting across from me in his cluttered office that smelled like protein powder and old sweat, not meeting my eyes. "Look, Danny, you're a good guy, but I can't have drama here. Anna called me, said you were having some kind of episode, making accusations. Some of the members have complained about you muttering to yourself while you're cleaning. Mrs. Patterson said you snapped at her when she asked you to wipe down a machine. Mrs. Patterson leaves every machine dripping wet and never wipes anything down herself. That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Frank sighed. "The point is that Anna's a respected attorney in this town. Her family practically built half of Millbrook. And you're going through something, man. I get it. But I can't have it affecting my business. She's sleeping with my brother." He looked uncomfortable. "That's between you and her. You believe me, though. You believe that could be true." Silence. "I'm sorry, Danny. I really am." I cleaned out my locker and left. It was 2 p.m, the sun too bright, everything too normal. I drove past the coffee shop where Anna and I used to go on Saturday mornings, past the hardware store where I used to buy supplies for jobs that didn't exist anymore, past the elementary school where Laya had learned to read. My phone rang. Laya. "Dad? Hey, sweetheart." "Mom called me. She said you're having some kind of breakdown." I pulled into the parking lot of the abandoned grocery store on Route 15, put the truck in park. "I'm not having a breakdown." "She said you accused her of cheating." "I did." "With Uncle Greg?" "Yes." Silence on the line. Then, "Dad, that's crazy." "Is it?" "Uncle Greg is helping her with Grandpa's estate. They've been working together for months. Of course they're spending time together." "At 3 a.m? "What?" "Nothing. Forget it." "Dad, I'm worried about you. Mom said you lost your job at the gym. She said you're not taking care of yourself. Maybe you should come stay with me for a while. Or see someone, a counselor. Your mother put you up to this call. She's worried. I'm worried." "I'm fine, Laya." "You don't sound fine." I closed my eyes. My daughter. 19 years old, studying psychology at Penn State, the best thing I'd ever done with my life. And here I was, losing her too. "I have to go," I said. "Dad." I hung up. That night, I sat in the cottage with all the lights off, watching the main house through the window. Anna came home at 8, Greg's truck following 10 minutes later. They didn't try to hide it anymore. Why would they? I was just the crazy ex-husband living in the shed, making wild accusations nobody believed. I opened my laptop and started searching. Hotel records, credit card statements, phone bills, anything I could. Access from the joint accounts Anna hadn't closed yet. She'd gotten sloppy with the inheritance money, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Thousands of dollars spent at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in cities I'd never visited. I started taking screenshots, building a file, making a timeline. If nobody was going to believe me, I'd make them believe me. I started following Greg on social media. Not physically, I wasn't stupid enough to drive around town stalking people, but online, where people put their whole lives on display and called it connecting. Greg loved Instagram. Loved it, like some people love oxygen. Every day brought new posts, client transformations, meal prep videos, motivational quotes superimposed over pictures of himself, shirtless and glistening. He had 12,000 followers, 12,000 people who apparently cared about his protein intake and workout splits, and photos with Anna. They were careful about it at first. Group shots from charity events, professional photos from foundation meetings where Anna served as treasurer. But I could see it now that I was looking, the way they stood just slightly too close, the way his hand always seemed to find the small of her back, the inside jokes in the comment section that nobody else would understand. "Great working with you tonight," she'd comment on a photo of him at some restaurant. "Always a pleasure," he'd reply with a winking emoji. I screenshotted everything, built folders on my laptop organized by date, by location, by type of evidence. I was meticulous. I was obsessed. I was the crazy person Anna said I was, except I was right. The bank statements told a story too. Anna had opened a new credit card in April, right after her father died. Business expenses, she'd called it. Estate management costs. The bills came to the cottage. She hadn't bothered changing the mailing address. And I opened everyone. Charges at the Valley Forge Grand Hotel. Dinners at Marcello's, that upscale Italian place in Harrisburg. A jewelry purchase at Cartier for $6,000. I'd never received any jewelry. I documented everything, spreadsheets, timelines, cross-references between social media posts and credit card charges. On June 15th, Greg posted a photo of a steak dinner with the caption, "Celebrating Success." On June 15th, Anna's credit card showed a $300 charge at Morton's Steakhouse in Philadelphia. On July 3rd, Greg posted a sunset photo from the King of Prussia Mall. On July 3rd, Anna's credit card showed a hotel charge at the Valley Forge Grand, plus dinner at the hotel restaurant, plus charges at 3 different stores in the mall. The pattern was undeniable. They'd been doing this for months, maybe longer, and they'd been using her father's money to fund it. I called the one lawyer I knew who might talk to me, Susan Pierce. She practiced family law out of a shabby office above a pizza shop in the next town over, far enough from Millbrook that Anna's reputation couldn't reach her. "Danny Garrett," she said when she answered. "I heard about you and Anna. Word travels fast. It's a small county. What can I do for you?" "I need to know my options. For divorce. Come see me Monday, 10 o'clock. Bring documentation of everything, assets, debts, income, the works." "What about proof of adultery?" She paused. "Pennsylvania is a no-fault state. Adultery doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Even if she's stealing from her father's estate to pay for it." Another pause, longer this time. "Bring everything you have. Monday, 10 o'clock. I hung up feeling something like hope for the first time in weeks. Saturday night, I sat in my truck outside Marcello's restaurant in Harrisburg, 90 minutes from Millbrook, watching the front door. I'd seen Greg's Instagram post at 6 p.m., date night at my favorite spot. The photo showed a candlelit table, white tablecloth, expensive wine. You could see part of a woman's hand in the corner of the frame, slender fingers, no wedding ring. Anna never wore her ring anymore, said it got in the way at work. I'd driven here on a hunch, and the hunch paid off. At 8:30, they emerged together. Anna in a black dress I'd never seen, something elegant and expensive that showed off the gym body she'd been building with Greg's help. Greg in slacks and a button-down, his hand possessively on her lower back as he guided her to his truck. They didn't kiss. They were too smart for that, too careful. But the intimacy was obvious in the way they moved together, the way she laughed at something he said, the way she touched his arm before climbing into the passenger seat. I took photos with my phone. Not great quality in the parking lot lighting, but good enough. Good enough to show they were together, alone, at a romantic restaurant, 90 minutes from home. They drove away in Greg's truck. I followed at a distance, keeping several cars between us. They headed north on Route 83, then west on Route 322. I expected them to head back to Millbrook, back to the mansion, where they could finish what they'd started over dinner. Instead, they pulled into the Valley Forge Grand Hotel. I parked across the street and watched them walk into the lobby together, watched them approach the front desk, watched the clerk hand Greg a key card. 20 minutes later, I saw lights come on in a fifth-floor window. I sat there until midnight, taking photos of the hotel, the timestamp, the room number I'd memorized. Then I drove home. The cottage was dark and cold. I uploaded the photos to my laptop, added them to the growing file of evidence, updated my timeline. Anna and Greg, Valley Forge Grand Hotel, September 28th. Room 512. Check-in time, approximately 9:15 p.m. I pulled up Anna's credit card statement from August. There it was. Valley Forge Grand Hotel, charged to her estate management card. $780 for a two-night, stay. I had her. Susan Pierce's office smelled like pizza and old carpet. She was maybe 60 years old, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, sharp eyes that had probably seen every variety of human ugliness and wasn't impressed by any of it. I spread my evidence across her desk. Bank statements, credit card bills, printed screenshots of social media posts, photos from the restaurant and hotel, the timeline I'd built showing the pattern of their affair. She studied everything in silence for 20 minutes, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. Finally, she sat back. This is comprehensive. Is it enough? For what? To prove she's cheating. To prove she's using estate money for personal expenses. To get me something in the divorce. Susan tapped her pen against the desk. Let's talk about what you're actually looking at here. First, the adultery. Pennsylvania is technically a fault state. You can cite adultery as grounds for divorce. But we're also a no-fault state, meaning either party can file for divorce without proving fault. Most judges don't care about adultery unless it affected marital assets. She's spending estate money on hotel rooms where she's sleeping with my brother. That brings us to point 2, the estate funds. Is this her money or estate money? Her father died in March. She's the executor. The estate hasn't been settled yet. Who else benefits from the estate? I don't know. I never saw the will. Susan made a note. We need to see that will. If there are other beneficiaries, other heirs, charities, creditors, and Anna is using estate funds for personal expenses before those beneficiaries are paid, that's a problem. That's potentially a breach of fiduciary duty. How do I get the will? It should be filed with the Register of Wills office. Public record. But Danny, She looked at me seriously. Before we go down this road, I need you to understand something. Anna is a lawyer. She has resources, connections, and she knows how the system works. You're unemployed, living in a cottage on property she owns, with no significant assets. Even if we prove adultery, even if we prove financial misconduct, you're not going to win big here. I don't care about winning big. I just want her to face consequences. Consequences for what? Breaking your heart? The legal system doesn't work that way. Consequences for stealing from her father's estate, for destroying my reputation in this town, for turning my own daughter against me. Susan was quiet for a moment. Revenge. Justice. Sometimes they're the same thing. She pulled out a retainer agreement. My rate is $200 an hour. I'll need $2,000 as a retainer to get started. I'll pull the will, file for divorce, and start building a case. But Danny, I need you to be smart about this. Don't contact Anna directly. Don't follow her around. Don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. The moment you give her ammunition to paint you as the bad guy, you lose whatever moral high ground you have. What about the evidence I've already collected? The social media stuff is fine. It's public. The bank statements from joint accounts are fine. You have legal access. The photos you took in public places are fine. But don't break into her house. Don't hack her email. Don't do anything illegal. I'm not going to break the law. Good. Because if you do, I can't help you. She slid the retainer agreement across the desk. Think about it. This is going to get ugly. And it's going to cost you money you don't have. Are you sure this is what you want? I signed the agreement. I'm sure. I didn't have $2,000. I had $800 in checking and maybe another $300 in an old savings account I'd forgotten about. I'd have to figure out the rest. But I was committed now. This was happening. The Register of Wills office was in the county courthouse, a grand old building with marble floors and the kind of institutional atmosphere that made you feel small and judged. I waited in line behind an elderly woman probating her husband's estate and a lawyer in an expensive suit dealing with something complicated. When my turn came, the clerk, a tired-looking woman named Janet, according to her name tag, barely looked up. I need to see a will. Harold Westbrook. Died in March. She typed into her computer. You a beneficiary? He was my father-in-law. Name? Daniel Garrett. More typing. Then she disappeared into a back room and returned with a thin file. $3 for copies. I paid with quarters and dimes, and she ran the will through an ancient photocopier that wheezed and rattled. 5 pages total. I took them to my truck and read. Harold Westbrook's last will and testament, dated January 2023, 2 months before he died. Properly witnessed and notarized. The estate was substantial, the mansion valued at $1.2 million. Investment accounts worth another $800,000. Life insurance policies worth $300,000. Various personal property, vehicles, collectibles. Total estate value, approximately $2.5 million. Distribution was as follows. 60% to Anna Westbrook Garrett, his daughter. 30% to the Millbrook Community Foundation, a local charity. 10% to Gregory David Garrett, who has been like a son to me in my final years. I read that line 3 times. Greg was getting 10%, $250,000, and Anna was the executor, controlling when and how distributions were made. The will also specified that Anna would manage the estate with full authority to sell assets, settle debts, and make distributions as she sees fit, subject to the terms of this will and applicable law. Translation. Anna had complete control over $2.5 million, and she was supposed to distribute 30% to the foundation and 10% to Greg once the estate was settled. But she hadn't done that yet. The estate was still in probate, still technically unsettled, which meant every dollar she spent on hotels and restaurants and jewelry was coming out of the estate before the other beneficiaries got their share, which meant she was stealing. Not from me. I wasn't a beneficiary, but from the Millbrook Community Foundation, and, ironically, from Greg himself. I called Susan from the parking lot. I got the will, and I read her the relevant sections. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This is interesting. How interesting? Very. If Anna is using estate funds for personal expenses before making the required distributions, she's breaching her fiduciary duty as executor. The foundation could sue her. Hell, Greg could sue her, though I doubt he'd be that stupid. The foundation? Who runs that? Martha Williams. She's been running it for 30 years, tough as nails, zero tolerance for financial impropriety. Would she sue? If she knew Anna was depleting the estate? Absolutely. Martha takes her fiduciary responsibilities very seriously. The foundation is entitled to 30%, that's $750,000. If Anna's spending that money on personal luxuries, Martha would crucify her. How do we tell her? We don't. You can't approach her directly. That could be seen as interference with estate administration. But if someone anonymously provided her with evidence of potential mismanagement, she'd be obligated to investigate. Someone like a concerned citizen? Hypothetically, yes. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Thanks, Susan. Cheers, Zanine. Danny, be careful. If this goes wrong, if it traces back to you, it won't. I hung up and drove home to the cottage, already planning my next move. I spent Monday night crafting the email. It took 3 hours to get it right. Detailed enough to be credible, vague enough to be untraceable. I created a new email address using a VPN and a fake name, millbrookcitizen20248protonmail.com. Then I wrote, Dear Mrs. Williams, I am writing to bring to your attention concerns regarding the management of the Harold Westbrook estate. As you may know, the Millbrook Community Foundation is entitled to receive 30% of Mr. Westbrook's estate, per the terms of his will filed with the Register of Wills in March 2024. However, it has come to my attention that the estate executor, Anna Westbrook Garrett, may be using estate funds for personal expenses prior to making the required charitable distribution. Attached are credit card statements showing charges for luxury hotels, fine dining, and personal shopping, all charged to an account titled Westbrook Estate Management, LLC. As a concerned citizen and supporter of the Foundation's work, I believe you should investigate whether these expenditures are appropriate estate expenses or personal use of funds that rightfully belong to the Foundation. I am sending this anonymously because I do not wish to become involved in any legal proceedings, but I felt the Foundation should be aware of these concerns. Sincerely, a concerned citizen. I attached PDF files of the most damning credit card statements, the hotels, the expensive restaurants, the Cartier jewelry purchase. Everything was redacted except the charges themselves and the account name. I hit send at 11:30 p.m. and immediately deleted the email account. Then I waited. Martha Williams called an emergency foundation board meeting for Thursday afternoon. I knew because Sally Martinez, who worked at the library and volunteered at the foundation, mentioned it when I ran into her at the grocery store Wednesday morning. Something's going on with the Westbrook estate, she said, loading her groceries onto the belt. Martha received some kind of anonymous tip about financial irregularities. She's been on the phone with lawyers all week. What kind of irregularities? I don't know details, but Martha was furious. You know how she is about the Foundation's money. I knew. Martha Williams had run the Millbrook Community Foundation since 1995, turning it from a small local charity into a significant county-wide organization. She was notoriously meticulous about finances, having been burned by an embezzling treasurer back in the early 2000s. She trusted no one and verified everything. "Anna's the executor of that estate, right?" Sally continued. "I heard the foundation is supposed to get a big donation from it." "I heard that too." "Well, whatever's going on, Martha's not happy. The board meeting tomorrow is closed door, but she told me it's about potential fiduciary misconduct. That's never good." I thanked Sally for the information and left, feeling a small spark of satisfaction. That night, I drove past Town Hall around 6 p.m. Cars were parked out front, board members arriving for the meeting. I recognized several vehicles, including Anna's silver BMW. Greg's truck was there too, which surprised me. He wasn't a board member. Why would he be at a closed foundation meeting? Unless they'd brought him in as a witness, or as another person of interest. I parked down the street and waited. The meeting lasted until after 9. When people finally started leaving, they looked grim. Anna emerged near the end, walking quickly to her car, phone pressed to her ear. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her shoulders. Greg came out a few minutes later, alone, looking shell-shocked. I drove home and waited for the fallout. On Friday morning, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the cottage door at 7 a.m. "Daniel Garrett?" "That's me." "You've been served." He handed me an envelope and left. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a divorce complaint filed by Anna Westbrook Garrett, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full ownership of the estate property, 0 spousal support, and immediate separation of all marital assets. The second was a petition for a restraining order, accusing me of harassment, stalking, and making threatening statements. The petition claimed I had been following Anna to public events, showing up at her workplace, and making wild accusations that damaged her reputation. She was requesting that I be barred from coming within 500 feet of her residence, or her place of employment. The hearing was scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. I called Susan immediately. "They served you already?" "This morning." "That's fast. She must have filed late yesterday." "What do I do?" "Come to my office this afternoon. We need to prepare a response. And Danny, have you been following her? Showing up places where she is?" "I went to one town council meeting where she was presenting." "That's it." "Nothing else? No sitting outside her office, no driving past the house repeatedly, no social media contacts?" "Nothing." "Good. Because if she can prove a pattern of harassment, that restraining order will get approved, and you'll be forced to leave the property immediately. You'll be homeless. I haven't done anything wrong. Then we'll prove that Monday. But Danny, if there's anything you're not telling me..." "There's nothing. I took photos of her and Greg at a restaurant and a hotel, but I was in public places. I sent an anonymous email to the foundation about estate mismanagement, but they can't trace that to me. That's it." Silence on the line. "Danny." "What?" "The anonymous email. That could be seen as a malicious act intended to damage her reputation." "It was the truth. She is mismanaging the estate." "That doesn't matter if it looks like revenge. If Anna's lawyers figure out you sent that email..." "They can't. I used a VPN, a disposable email address, and I deleted everything. There's no trail." Another pause. "You're playing a dangerous game." "I know. Come to my office at 2. We have work to do." I hung up and stared at the divorce papers. After 20 years, this was how it ended. Legal documents and accusations, nothing left but the paperwork. I should have felt sad. Instead, I felt numb. The courthouse was packed Monday morning. I sat next to Susan on a wooden bench outside Judge Harold Brennan's courtroom, watching other cases get called. Domestic disputes, child custody battles, protection orders, the everyday wreckage of failed relationships. Anna arrived at 8:30 with 2 lawyers, not her usual solo practice attorney, but big firm guys from Philadelphia. Expensive suits, leather briefcases, the kind of legal muscle that charged $500 an hour. She didn't look at me, just sailed past with her legal team, all business, all confidence. She brought the varsity squad, Susan muttered. Is that bad? It means she's scared. People don't spend that kind of money unless they're worried. At 9 o'clock, the bailiff called our case. Garrett versus Garrett, petition for protection from abuse. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Brennan was 60-something, gray hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He had the weary expression of someone who'd heard every lie and excuse in the book. Anna's lead attorney, his name was Peterson, according to the business card he'd handed the clerk, stood up. Your Honor, my client Anna Garrett is seeking a protection from abuse order against her estranged husband, Daniel Garrett. Mr. Garrett has engaged in a pattern of harassment and stalking behavior that has caused my client significant emotional distress and fear for her safety. Brennan looked at me over his glasses. What kind of behavior? Peterson consulted his notes. Mr. Garrett has followed my client to public events, including a town council meeting on September 19. He has made wild accusations about my client engaging in an extramarital affair. He has contacted third parties with defamatory information about my client's professional conduct, and he has repeatedly appeared at locations where my client is present, despite being asked to stay away. Has he threatened violence? Not explicitly, Your Honor, but my client fears that his behavior may escalate. She is concerned for her safety. Has he violated any previous orders? There are no previous orders, Your Honor. We're seeking this order as a preventive measure. Brennan turned to Susan. Counselor? Susan stood. Your Honor, Mr. Garrett has not engaged in any behavior that warrants a restraining order. He attended one public town council meeting, which is his right as a citizen. He has made no threats, engaged in no violence, and violated no laws. My client's only crime is that his marriage is ending badly, which, unfortunately, is not a crime at all. What about the accusations of an affair? My client has evidence supporting his belief that Mrs. Garrett is engaging in adultery with his brother. Whether that belief is correct is a matter for the divorce proceedings, but expressing that belief is not harassment. What about contacting third parties? We have no knowledge of any such contacts. If Mrs. Garrett has evidence of Mr. Garrett contacting third parties, she should present it. Brennan looked at Peterson. Do you have evidence of third-party contacts? Peterson hesitated. We believe Mr. Garrett may have been behind an anonymous email sent to the Millbrook Community Foundation making allegations about my client's management of her father's estate. You believe, or you know? We believe, Your Honor. That's not evidence. That's speculation. The timing is suspicious. Suspicious isn't enough for a restraining order, Counselor. Brennan flipped through his files. Does Mr. Garrett have a history of violence? No, Your Honor, but has he made any explicit threats? Not explicit, but my client fears. Fear of what might happen isn't grounds for a restraining order. I need evidence of actual threatening behavior. Brennan turned to me. Mr. Garrett, are you going to hurt your wife? No, sir. Are you going to harass her? No, sir. Then we're done here. He picked up his gavel. Petition denied. Mrs. Garrett, if your husband does anything actually threatening, and I mean threatening, not just inconvenient, come back with evidence. Until then, this court doesn't issue restraining orders based on speculation and hurt feelings. The gavel came down. Peterson tried to argue, but Brennan was already calling the next case. Outside the courtroom, Anna's face was pale with fury. Her lawyers huddled around her, speaking in low voices. She shot me one look of pure hatred before they hustled her away. Susan grabbed my arm. You got lucky. Don't push it. I know. I mean it, Danny. Stay away from her. Let this play out naturally. The Foundation investigation will do its work. You don't need to do anything else. Okay. But even as I said it, I knew I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Greg showed up at the cottage that night at 10 p.m. I was watching television with the sound off, eating microwaved spaghetti, when his truck pulled up outside. I heard the door slam, heard his boots on the gravel path, heard 3 hard knocks on the door. I opened it. He looked like hell. Unshaven, red-eyed, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans. The usually immaculate Greg Garrett looked like he'd been living in his truck. We need to talk, he said. About what? You know what? He pushed past me into the cottage. What the hell are you doing? I live here. Or did you forget? Don't play games with me. The Foundation thing. The anonymous email with all the bank statements and hotel receipts. That was you. I don't know what you're talking about. He got in my face, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You're ruining her life. She ruined mine first. Your life was already ruined, Danny. You couldn't keep your business going. You couldn't provide for your family. Anna carried you for 3 years while you sat around feeling sorry for yourself. And now that she's finally moved on, you want to burn everything down because you're bitter. Moved on? Is that what you call sleeping with your brother? We're in love. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because I was surprised, but because hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. You're in love, I repeated. Yes. We've been together for almost a year, and we would have told you, would have handled this properly, but you were so pathetic, so broken, that Anna felt guilty. She wanted to wait until you got back on your feet. But you never did you? You just kept spiraling, kept getting worse, and now you're trying to take everyone down with you. A year, I said quietly. You've been doing this for a year. Since last October, her father's funeral. We were both grieving, we connected, and things happened. We didn't plan it, but we're not ashamed of it either. Her father's funeral? Jesus Christ, Greg. Harold would have understood. He loved me like a son. That's why he put me in the will. That's why you helped him during his physical therapy. That's why you spent all that time at the house. You were angling for the inheritance. His jaw tightened. I was there because I cared about him. The money was just Harold's way of recognizing that. And sleeping with his daughter was your way of saying thank you? He shoved me. Not hard enough to knock me down, but enough to make me stumble backward. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll hit me? Go ahead. Give Anna more ammunition. You think you're so smart, don't you? Sending those emails, digging up dirt, playing detective. But you're not smart, Danny. You're desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Like spending estate money on hotel rooms before the beneficiaries get paid? His face went pale. Yeah, I continued. I saw the will. The foundation gets 30%. You get 10%. But Anna's been spending that money like it's hers. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, all charged to the estate account. That's called breach of fiduciary duty, Greg. That's called theft. And when Martha Williams finishes her investigation, Anna's going to lose everything. Her law license, her reputation, maybe her freedom. And you? You're going to lose that 10% you were counting on, because it'll all go to lawyers and settlements. He said quietly. You slept with my wife. You helped her steal from her father's estate. You came to my home, ate my food, pretended to be my brother while you were planning this whole thing. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. You wanted the money and the woman, and you didn't care who you hurt to get them. Well, congratulations. You got them. Now let's see if you can keep them. He hit me. A straight right to the jaw that snapped my head back and sent stars exploding across my vision. I stumbled, caught myself on the kitchenette counter. You want to know what it feels like? Greg snarled, advancing on me. You want to know what it's like to lose everything? Welcome to the club, Danny, because when this is over, when Anna and I are happy and you're living in some shitty motel, you're going to realize that you did this to yourself. You pushed her away with your weakness, your failure, your constant victim mentality. She didn't leave you for me. She left you because you stopped being a man. Something snapped inside me. I launched myself at him, driving my shoulder into his chest, slamming him back against the wall. We grappled like animals, graceless and furious, knocking over the cheap furniture, breaking dishes, smashing lamps. He outweighed me by 30 pounds of gym muscle, but I had rage, pure and simple, the kind that makes you stupid and dangerous. I got him in a headlock, squeezed until he gagged, then drove his face into the doorframe once, twice, feeling his nose crunch under the impact. He roared and threw me off and came at me swinging. His fist caught me in the ribs, and I felt something crack. Pain exploded through my chest, but I didn't care. I grabbed a coffee mug from the counter and smashed it against the side of his head. He went down hard, stunned, and I was on him, punching, hitting, releasing 3 years of humiliation and 6 months of gaslighting and 20 years of wasted life into his face. Danny, stop! A voice from the doorway, not Anna's. A man's voice, authoritative and commanding. I looked up. 2 Millbrook police officers stood in the doorway, flashlights drawn. Greg lay beneath me, bleeding from his nose and mouth, his left eye already swelling shut. I was sitting on his chest, my fist cocked back for another punch, my own face probably broken in places I hadn't catalogued yet. Step away from him, the first officer said. Now! I climbed off Greg and raised my hands. They cuffed me immediately, professional and efficient, while one of them called for an ambulance. He attacked me. I came here to talk, and he went crazy. I want to press charges. The officer looked at the destroyed cottage, the overturned furniture. What were you talking about? Family stuff, the divorce. I was trying to reason with him, and he snapped. That true, Mr. Garrett? The officer asked me. He came to my home and threatened me. I defended myself. By putting him through a doorframe? He hit me first. The officer examined Greg's face, then mine. You both look pretty beat up. Mr. Garrett? Greg, do you want to press assault charges? Damn right I do. Then we'll need statements from both of you. He turned to me. Daniel Garrett, you're under arrest for assault. You have the right to remain silent. They read me my rights, while the ambulance arrived and loaded Greg onto a stretcher. His nose was definitely broken, his eye swollen shut, his lip split. He looked like he'd been in a car accident. I probably looked worse. They took me to the Millbrook police station, processed me, photographed my injuries, and locked me in a holding cell in the basement. The cell was maybe 8 by 10 feet, with a metal bench bolted to the wall and a toilet in the corner that smelled like a decade of regret. I sat on the bench, my ribs screaming, my face throbbing, and started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. Sitting in jail while my wife and brother lived in luxury on stolen money, while the whole town thought I was the crazy one. But I wasn't crazy. I was right. And soon, everyone would know it. The laughter turned to coughing, which turned to pain, which eventually faded to numbness. I lay down on the bench and closed my eyes. Susan bailed me out the next morning. $2,000 bond, which she paid with a check and a look of profound disappointment. What were you thinking? He came to my place. He started it. That's not what the police report says. It says you hospitalized him. Broken nose, broken cheekbone, possible concussion. Danny, he could have died. He attacked me first. And you could have walked away. You could have called the police. Instead, you beat him. Now you're facing felony assault charges. Do you understand what that means? You could go to prison. He deserved it. That's not how the law works. Susan rarely raised her voice, but she was yelling now. You don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner just because someone wronged you. There are legal channels for this. We were handling it legally. And now you've destroyed any moral high ground you had. She drove me back to the cottage in angry silence. When we pulled up, the place looked like a crime scene. Yellow tape across the door, evidence markers on the ground, the window broken from where Greg's body had hit it during the fight. You can't stay here, Susan said. This is an active crime scene. Do you have somewhere to go? No. She sighed. There's a motel on Route 15, the Mountain View. Tell them I sent you and they'll give you a weekly rate. I'll cover the first week. Susan, don't thank me. Just don't do anything else stupid. She handed me $200 in cash. For food and necessities. Your arraignment is Friday. Until then, stay away from Anna, stay away from Greg, stay away from everyone. Do you understand? Yes. I mean it, Danny. One more mistake, and I can't help you anymore. You'll be on your own. She drove away, leaving me standing in front of the crime scene that used to be my home. I walked to my truck, grabbed the duffel bag I kept in the back with spare clothes, and drove to the Mountain View Motel. The Mountain View Motel had no view of any mountain. It faced Route 15, a busy highway that carried trucks and commuters between Harrisburg and State College. My room was on the second floor, number 217, with a window that overlooked the parking lot and a bathroom that smelled like mildew and despair. I stayed there for 3 days, eating gas station food and watching local news coverage of the prominent attorney under investigation for estate fraud. The story had broken wide, not just Millbrook anymore, but Harrisburg and Philadelphia stations. Anna's face on every broadcast, looking haggard and defensive, refusing to comment as reporters shouted questions. The Millbrook Community Foundation had filed a formal complaint with the Pennsylvania Bar Association. Martha Williams gave an interview calling the alleged misconduct unconscionable and promising that the foundation would pursue all legal remedies to recover what is rightfully owed to the community. Greg was mentioned in several reports as a beneficiary who may have benefited from the improper expenditures. His gym had issued a statement placing him on indefinite leave pending the outcome of investigations. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. My phone rang constantly, reporters looking for comments, old friends calling to ask what the hell was going on, Laya calling and texting and begging me to call her back. I ignored everything except Susan's calls about the arraignment. Chakwiku. Thursday night, I finally called Laya. Dad? She sounded like she'd been crying. Hey, sweetheart. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. Mom said you attacked Uncle Greg, that you put him in the hospital. She said you're having a complete breakdown and I shouldn't talk to you. But then I saw the news about the estate investigation and the foundation lawsuit, and I don't know what to believe anymore. What do you want to know? Is it true? About Mom and Uncle Greg? Yes. And the money? The estate fraud? Yes. Silence on the line. Then, why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. You didn't believe me. Because Mom said you were crazy. She said you were making up wild accusations because you couldn't handle the divorce. She was so convincing, Dad. So calm and rational, and you were falling apart? Yeah. I was falling apart because I'd just discovered my wife was sleeping with my brother and using her father's money to fund the affair. And when I tried to tell anyone, she convinced them I was mentally unstable. That's called gaslighting, Laya. That's what your mother does. More silence. Then, I'm sorry, Dad. I should have believed you. It's okay. It's not okay. I abandoned you when you needed me. I let Mom turn me against you. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes against unexpected tears. You didn't know. She's good at lying. She's had years of practice. Are you going to be okay? The news said you're facing assault charges. I'll be fine. Will you go to prison? I don't know. Dad, I'm scared. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. We talked for another hour. She told me about college, about her classes, about the boyfriend she'd been hiding from Anna because she knew her mother would disapprove. Normal things, mundane things, the kind of conversation we used to have before everything fell apart. When we hung up, I felt something like hope. My daughter believed me again. That was worth more than revenge. Almost. Friday morning, Susan picked me up at 7:30 for the 9 o'clock arraignment. I'd showered and shaved, put on my one decent suit, wrinkled from being stuffed in a duffel bag, but clean, and tried to look like someone who hadn't been living in a motel for a week. The courthouse was packed. Word had spread about the arraignment, and apparently half of Millbrook wanted to see the crazy ex-husband who'd attacked his wife's lover. I recognized faces from town, people from the gym, from the diner, from the hardware store, people I'd known for years, now staring at me like I was a circus act. Anna was there with her legal team sitting in the back row. She looked thinner, older, her expensive suit hanging loose on her frame. Our eyes met for a moment and she looked away quickly. Greg wasn't there. Still recovering, probably. The bailiff called my case at 9:15. Commonwealth versus Daniel Garrett. Assault. I stood with Susan. The prosecutor was a young guy named Wilson, maybe 30, trying to look tough in a suit that was slightly too big. Judge Patricia Morrison presided. 60-something, no nonsense, with a reputation for being fair but firm. She reviewed the file in silence, then looked up. Mr. Garrett, you're charged with aggravated assault. How do you plead? Susan stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Mr. Wilson, what are the Commonwealth's recommendations for bail? Your Honor, given the serious nature of the injuries to the victim, the Commonwealth requests bail be set at $50,000. Susan objected immediately. Your Honor, that's excessive. Mr. Garrett has no criminal history, strong ties to the community, and this incident arose from a domestic dispute where he was defending himself in his own home. His own home? Wilson scoffed. He's living in a motel. He was living on the property in question at the time of the incident. The victim came to Mr. Garrett's residence uninvited and, according to my client, initiated the physical confrontation. Morrison looked at me. Mr. Garrett, did you invite Gregory Garrett to your residence that night? No, Your Honor. He showed up unannounced and forced his way inside. And you felt threatened? Yes, Your Honor. He was drunk, aggressive, and making threats. Wilson jumped in. Your Honor, the evidence shows Mr. Garrett inflicted far more damage than he received. The victim required emergency medical treatment. This wasn't self-defense, it was retaliation. For what? Morrison asked. Wilson hesitated. Personal matters between the parties. What kind of personal matters? Mr. Garrett believes his wife is having an affair with the victim. Is she? Wilson looked uncomfortable. That's not relevant to the assault charge. It's relevant to motive and state of mind, counselor. Morrison turned to me. Mr. Garrett, are you a danger to the community? No, Your Honor. Are you going to assault anyone else? No, Your Honor. Then I'm setting bail at $10,000, cash or bond. Mr. Garrett, you're ordered to have no contact with Gregory Garrett or Anna Garrett. Preliminary hearing is set for 2 weeks from today. Don't miss it. The gavel came down. Outside, Susan pulled me aside. $10,000, can you make it? I don't have $10,000. I barely have $10. I'll make some calls. Maybe we can find a bondsman who'll work with us. And if we can't, then you stay in jail until the preliminary hearing. I spent that afternoon in Susan's office while she worked the phones, calling bail, bondsmen, and explaining my situation. Most wanted 10% down, $1,000 I didn't have. Finally, she found one who'd take $500 and a payment plan. His name is Ricky Torres, Susan said. He's not exactly reputable, but he'll get you out. You'll owe him $500 now and another $500 within 30 days, plus 15% interest. Where am I supposed to get $500? Susan reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when this is over. Susan, don't argue. You need to be out of jail to help with your own defense. And frankly, I need you functional, not rotting in a cell. She called Torres, arranged the bond, and by 6 p.m., I was free again. Free-ish. Out on bail, facing felony charges, living in a motel, owing money to a bail bondsman and my lawyer. But free. The Millbrook Community Foundation filed their lawsuit on Monday. It made the front page of the Gazette. Local charity sues attorney for estate fraud. The article detailed the allegations. Anna had misappropriated approximately $78,000 in estate funds for personal use, including luxury hotels, fine dining, jewelry, and travel. She'd also failed to make quarterly distributions to the foundation as required by Harold Westbrook's will, costing them an estimated $90,000 in lost investment income. Total damages sought: $168,000 plus legal fees. The lawsuit named Anna as the primary defendant and Greg as a co-defendant, alleging he'd knowingly benefited from the fraudulent expenditures. The foundation's attorneys had included text messages between Anna and Greg discussing their trips, messages where they explicitly referenced using estate funds for their getaways. She documented her own crime. Every hotel stay, every dinner, every gift. She'd texted about it, and those texts were now evidence. The Pennsylvania Bar Association announced they were opening a formal investigation. If the allegations were substantiated, Anna could face disbarment. I read the article at the motel, eating cold pizza and drinking gas station coffee, and felt something like satisfaction. My phone rang. Martha Williams. Mr. Garrett? Speaking. This is Martha Williams from the Millbrook Community Foundation. I believe we need to talk. About what? About the documents that were sent to me anonymously, about the estate fraud investigation, about your role in all of this. My stomach dropped. I don't know what you mean. Mr. Garrett, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know when someone is feeding me information. And the timing of that anonymous email coming right after your wife filed for divorce, after you'd been publicly humiliated in this town. Well, it doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. I didn't send any email. I didn't say you did. But hypothetically, if someone had sent me that information, I'd want to thank them. Because that person did the foundation a great service. Anna Garrett is a thief, and she would have continued stealing if someone hadn't exposed her. Hypothetically. Hypothetically. There was a smile in her voice. I also wanted you to know that the Foundation has no interest in pursuing any legal action against you. Whatever your motivations, the information was accurate and actionable. That's all that matters to us. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for having the courage to do the right thing, even when it cost you. She paused. And Mr. Garrett, I hope you find peace when this is over. You deserve it. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling something crack open inside my chest. Validation. After months of being called crazy, being gaslighted, being isolated and humiliated, someone finally acknowledged that I'd been right. It felt better than I'd expected. It felt worse than I'd hoped. 2 weeks later, I sat in Judge Morrison's courtroom for the preliminary hearing on the assault charges. Greg showed up looking like a movie star recovering from a bar fight, his nose bandaged, his eye still slightly swollen, a neck brace for effect. He milked the victim role, walking slowly, wincing dramatically, accepting sympathetic looks from the gallery. The prosecutor called him to testify first. Mr. Garrett, Gregory Garrett, can you describe what happened on the night of October 4th? Greg settled into the witness chair, adjusting his neck brace. I went to Danny's cottage to talk to him, to try to reason with him. The divorce had been filed, and I knew he was upset, and I wanted to make sure he was okay. What happened when you arrived? He invited me in. At first, everything seemed fine. We were talking about the situation, about Anna, about how we could handle things civilly. Then he started getting agitated, accusatory. He said I'd ruined his life, that I'd stolen his wife, that I was going to pay for what I'd done. Did he threaten you? Yes. He said he was going to make me regret ever getting involved with Anna. Then he attacked me. What do you mean, attacked? He punched me in the face, completely unprovoked. I tried to defend myself, but he was out of control. He kept hitting me, slamming my head against the door frame. What did you do? I tried to get away. I tried to talk him down, but he wouldn't stop. He was like an animal. Did you hit him back? Only in self-defense. I was trying to protect myself. Wilson showed photos of Greg's injuries, the broken nose, the swollen eye, the cuts and bruises. Then photos of my injuries, some bruised ribs, a split lip, nothing dramatic. Thank you, Mr. Garrett. No further questions. Susan stood for cross-examination. Mr. Greg Garrett, you said you went to the cottage to talk to Mr. Danny Garrett. What did you want to talk about? The divorce, the situation with Anna. I wanted to help him understand. Understand what? That Anna and I were in love. That the marriage was over. That he needed to move on. So, you went to his home, uninvited, to tell him that you were in love with his wife. I went to try to help. Help? By rubbing his face in the affair? Wilson objected. Argumentative. Sustained, Morrison said. Susan continued. Mr. Greg Garrett, were you drinking that night? I'd had a couple of beers earlier. A couple or more? I don't remember exactly. You don't remember. Were you intoxicated? No. But you'd been drinking, and you went to confront a man whose wife you'd been sleeping with for a year. I went to talk to him. Did you touch him first? Shove him? Get in his face? I may have. We were close. Emotions were high. So, you did initiate physical contact? Not aggressively. I was just trying to make him understand. By getting physical with him? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Greg hesitated, realizing he'd backed himself into a corner. It was a mutual fight. A mutual fight. So you weren't just a helpless victim being attacked by a crazy man? I was defending myself. From a man who you provoked by coming to his home drunk to brag about sleeping with his wife? Wilson objected again. Morrison sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury, if this went to trial, would hear that Greg wasn't the innocent victim he'd portrayed. Susan called me to testify next. I described Greg showing up uninvited, aggressive, drunk. I described him shoving me first, threatening me, getting in my face. I admitted that I'd fought back, that I'd lost control, that I'd hurt him badly. "Do you regret it?" Susan asked. "I regret that it got physical, but I don't regret defending myself in my own home." No further questions. Wilson cross-examined me, trying to portray me as a jealous husband who couldn't take it anymore and tried to destroy his romantic rival. I stuck to my story. Greg came to my house, started an argument, and I defended myself. Judge Morrison took 10 minutes to deliberate. Then she returned. "I'm binding this over for trial. There's enough evidence that a jury should decide what happened. Mr. Garrett, your bail conditions remain in place. Trial is set for January." The gavel came down. Outside, Susan grabbed my arm. "That went better than expected." "How is going to trial better?" "Because Greg's testimony wasn't as clean as they thought it would be. He admitted to drinking, to initiating physical contact, to provoking you. A jury might see this as mutual combat rather than assault. We might actually win this. And if we don't, then you go to prison for 3 to 5 years. I drove back to the motel, feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. The Bar Association hearing was scheduled for mid-November. I wasn't supposed to attend, it was a closed proceeding, but Susan had connections. She got me a seat in the observer section at the back of the room. Anna showed up looking like a ghost of herself. Thinner, paler, her expensive suit hanging loose on her diminished frame. Her attorneys flanked her, the same Philadelphia Sharks looking considerably less confident than they had at the restraining order hearing. The hearing lasted 4 hours. The bar's investigators presented bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, text messages between Anna and Greg. They showed a clear pattern. Anna had used estate funds for personal expenses before making required distributions to beneficiaries. 68 hotel stays over 18 months. 87 restaurant charges. 3 jewelry purchases. 2 European trips charged as estate business that had no legitimate estate purpose. Total misappropriation, $78,416. The bar's attorney questioned Anna directly. "Ms. Garrett, did you use funds from the Westbrook estate for personal expenses related to your relationship with Gregory Garrett?" Anna's lawyer tried to object, but the presiding attorney shut him down. "Answer the question, Ms. Garrett." Anna sat silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Yes." "Did you believe you had the legal authority to use estate funds for personal purposes?" I thought I could reimburse the estate later." "But you didn't reimburse it, did you?" "No." "Why not?" "I was going to. I just hadn't gotten around to it." "In 18 months, you never got around to reimbursing nearly $80,000 that you stole from an estate you were managing." "I didn't steal. You took money that wasn't yours, without authorization, for personal use. What do you call that?" Silence. The bar's attorney continued. "Ms. Garrett, you're an attorney. You know the rules governing fiduciary duty. You know that executors are held to the highest standards of honesty and integrity. And yet you violated those standards repeatedly, deliberately, and extensively. Why should you be allowed to continue practicing law?" Anna's lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, my client has cooperated fully with this investigation. She's agreed to make full restitution to the estate. She's taken responsibility for her actions." "She's taken responsibility after being caught," the bar's attorney shot back, "after an anonymous tip revealed her misconduct." If that tip hadn't come in, she'd still be stealing. The hearing ended around 4 p.m. The 3-member panel retired to deliberate. They returned an hour later with their decision. Disbarment, effective immediately. Anna would also be required to pay full restitution to the foundation, $168,000, the amount specified in the lawsuit, plus damages and legal fees. Her attorneys tried to argue for a suspension instead of disbarment, but the panel was unmoved. Ms. Garrett's conduct was egregious, extensive, and entirely self-serving, the presiding attorney said. She violated the trust placed in her as an executor and as an attorney. The only appropriate sanction is permanent disbarment. Anna sat perfectly still as the decision was read, her face blank. When it was over, she stood, gathered her things, and walked out without looking at anyone. I watched her go, feeling nothing like the satisfaction I'd expected. November turned to December. Snow came early that year, blanketing Millbrook in white and forcing me to spend more time in the motel room watching daytime television and eating vending. I machined food. Anna filed for bankruptcy in early December. Her assets, the mansion, the car, her savings, were all liquidated to pay the foundation's settlement and legal fees. She moved to Ohio to live with a sister, taking a job at a retail store while she figured out what to do with her disbarred, bankrupt life. Greg disappeared. His gym fired him. His apartment lease wasn't renewed. Rumor was he'd gone to Florida or California or somewhere warm where nobody knew his name. He didn't testify at my trial, which helped my case. The assault trial happened in mid-January, a week of testimony and legal arguments that all blurred together. Susan argued self-defense. The jury deliberated for 2 days. They came back with a verdict. Guilty of simple assault, a misdemeanor, not the felony charge. The judge sentenced me to 6 months, suspended plus 2 years probation and anger management classes. I wouldn't go to prison. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in a year.